I would say in the early part of your career, totally optimize for a good lead in corporate or a startup. Like if you can find a good lead who can really support you in learning, go for it. I think that's super important to learn the good habits and to have a manager who makes space for you.
And if you don't have the right manager in this kind of position, you're pretty much limited with how much you can learn. And it might even take you, it might take you in a direction where you kind of learn bad practices. If you really work for a bad manager in such a company, you need to identify that, and you need to make sure that you have someone else to learn from.
A lot of times when you come from a certain background where you may not have had access to these great career opportunities or these big companies, you make that your goal. And once you get there, if you have, the luck and the fortune to get there, you have to ask yourself the next question of where you want to go.
We have a special event planned for us. We have an Ask Me Anything event planned for us today, but we have also very important and special guests. We have Terhi Hänninen joining us from Berlin. We have Anya Ruvinskaya joining us from New York City. And we have Asaf Bord also joining us from New York, which is great. We have people, product professionals from all around the world joining here with one mission: to give our product community, all the attendees of this event, an opportunity to know how to advance their product career. I can't think of anything better to do this evening. So before we start, to get to know our speakers a little better, Asaf, how are you today, and what is it that you do? Let's introduce you to our audience.
Hi. First of all, thanks for having me. In the interest of time, I'll be very brief. So I've been in technology for about 15 years now, almost 10 years of them in product management. I've had the opportunity to work with some of amazing professionals in very diverse domains and companies, from startups to huge corporations. Today I work in WeWork, where I manage the sales and marketing platform. So again, keeping it short in the interest of time.
Thank you for just bringing your knowledge out there and giving our community the opportunity to learn from you. Let's move to Terhi Hänninen from Berlin. How are you today?
Good. I'm glad to be here.
Happy to have you here with us. So you're a senior product manager at Zalando. Tell us a little more about what you do.
So maybe I will first tell a little bit about Zalando. So it's not a global brand. So we are fashion e-commerce in Europe, in 17 markets here in Europe, over 30 million active customers a year. And I manage the on-site campaigns. So all the visual merchandising we do to help our customers find inspiration. And I have a long background with digital products from Finland, which is a small market. And then I got tired of working in a small, tiny market somewhere north and decided I need to move to international company and work in tech. And so I've done this kind of shift in my career, and maybe that will be something I can share a few insights on.
Absolutely, this will be wonderful. Anya Ruvinskaya from New York City / Washington, a very interesting time in your life right now. How are you today?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here with us. Tell us a little more about what is it that you do.
Well, currently I'm on a personal sabbatical. I chose a great time to do so during the pandemic. I started in the fall though, so this was a last minute wrench into my plans. And I've been working on some personal projects. I've been teaching product management actually, and consulting with startups. most recently, I worked with a startup based in Colombia, in Bogota, actually, and they are like a customer loyalty platform that have both B2B and B2C sides. Before that, my last full-time role was product lead at Spotify, where I worked on the creator side of Spotify, building tools and services for the music industry and for artists themselves. And before that, I was working on Minecraft, which is a popular video game. In case you haven't heard of it, it's like an open sandbox world game. And I was at Microsoft during that time.
Very well with two sons. It's
Okay, yes.
played every day.
For sure.
Very interesting. Okay, so let's dive into the questions, because this is the reason why we are all here. So the first question is for you, Terhi. The question comes from Sarah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm a little paranoid after. So the first question comes from Sarah. What does it take to be a great product manager? Are these the same things you would have chosen when you were 2 to 3 years into your career, or were your thoughts about it changed over time? So what does it take to be a great product manager?
Well, it takes different things depending on where you are in your career. I would say in the early years, it's a lot about the execution, kind of understanding how software development works. How do you work with engineers? How do you define what should be built? And then you need to start developing like a bigger picture view of the market, your company, the ecosystem you are in. And so you need to kind of raise your awareness of where you are in a bigger context. But also then you will start having a lot more responsibility about stakeholder management, about big presentations, about very important meetings. So as you progress with your career, like people skills, presentation skills, communication in general becomes super, super important. So I would say early career, great product manager looks quite different from the later stage product manager, and you kind of, that's why you need to develop constantly and kind of understand what are the skills you need to develop next to be able to take in more scope, more complex projects, more complex stakeholder situations.
This is a great answer. Thank you very much. So we will move to the next question. It goes to you, Anya. The question comes from Mike. What, in your opinion, are one's reason not to be inspired to climb up the ladder in the product world? So this is an unusual question, which I very, very admire.
It's a great question to ask. I appreciate it because I've pondered that a lot in my career. Great person to ask it too, that's currently on a sabbatical and quit Spotify. So I suppose I'm the person to answer that. They're personal reasons mostly, really. A lot of times when you come from a certain background where you may not have had access to these great career opportunities or these big companies, you make that your goal. And once you get there, if you have, the luck and the fortune to get there, you have to ask yourself the next question of where you want to go. For me, I was so focused on getting to that first goal. It took me a lot of time, and I got there that I never really made a plan for after that. And then I had to stop and ask myself, what do I want out of life? What kind of life do I want to live? And I started thinking a lot more about what I'm passionate about personally, what gives me the most satisfaction, and what kind of life I want to live. Thinking more about work-life balance, where I want to live. One of the reasons I left Microsoft is because I decided that I didn't want to live in Seattle. And I grew up in New York, and I wanted to come back home. And what happens a lot of times, especially with these product positions, is the satisfaction you get is by working with the engineers, working at the center of where everything is happening and the decisions are being made. So you don't have the same experience if you're not working at headquarters. Interesting time to be saying that because a lot of things are going remote and have went remote and are going remote permanently. So a lot of those dynamics may change. So location and just personal lifestyle was a factor for me. And another one is what I learned that I enjoy. I really figure I'm still on this journey of trying to figure out how to balance. One of the biggest things that gives me reward once I discovered product management was building something, was being there day in, day out with the designer, with the engineers. And once you kind of climb up the ranks, if you're in a company where it's large enough for it to have a hierarchy and to have a ladder to climb, once you're climbing that ladder, you're no longer doing those things day to day. Just as the first question we answered, totally agree with the answer. It becomes much more about stakeholder management. It becomes about leadership and managing and building the best team. So you're no longer doing those day-to-day functions, the more junior product managers are. And those are the things that I really enjoyed. So I started thinking about perhaps more entrepreneurial ventures, smaller companies, startups could be a great marriage for me of being able to do both things, having the product vision and strategy side, but also being able to be more hands-on and actually doing the work that gives me that kind of tangible satisfaction as well.
I can maybe add to that. I see a trend where into the product career ladder, an expert track is also added. So not just this kind of climb into leadership, the head of product, the VP of product, etc., but also like a principal role where you can just stay as an individual contributor, just building more and more seniority, bigger and bigger projects. So that's also, it seems like these two tracks are now emerging for product as well.
Interesting. So we are moving to the next question. And the next question is for you, Asaf. So it comes from Philip. And he is asking, I think you're going to like this question. Startup versus corporations. If I have the choice between these two options, what is the one that will upgrade my CV and skills?
So again, very interesting question. I actually spent some time in all types of companies, both very small startups and big corporations. My last role was with eBay, which was the biggest company I worked with. I think, again, it really depends on what phase in your career you are and what's the next step that you see for yourself. But if we kind of take a step back and look at startup versus corporates, at least from my experience, just generally speaking, startups are smaller companies, more focused operations, and you probably have the chance to experience more, work with more types of people, and the company would usually iterate faster and move faster than if you are in a corporate. Whereas in a corporate, you're already working on probably an established product within an established market, and you have a lot of people around you, and you have a lot of people you can learn from, you have a lot of people you can communicate with, and you have much more networking opportunities. So if I'm kind of doing a startup pros and cons versus corporate, for a startup, from my perspective, the pros are that you have you can be much more hands-on in a lot of aspects. Is both if you're a junior, but also if you're very experienced, you're much more hands-on. You can learn from other departments you work with because you actually interact with them more frequently than you would in a corporate. Usually, your path to success of product is very well defined, and but not only well defined, is something that you actually can iterate on and you can communicate with management. And that's an aspect of product management that you don't necessarily get to practice a lot unless you're actually in the mix of things. And generally speaking, because it's a smaller company, you have more chances for a quicker promotion, at least by title, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you'll be doing as much as you would if you had the same title in a big company. But if you're looking to beef up your CV, then getting a title it definitely helps, not necessarily takes you all the way through. And you're probably more flexible in defining your roles and responsibilities. So, if you're not exactly happy with what you're doing right now, you can probably talk to your manager and see how you can kind of adjust it. The cons, I think, are that you're heavily dependent on your direct manager giving you the right example and the right guidance and right mentorship and kind of helping you take the next step in your career. And if you don't have the right manager in this kind of position, you're pretty much limited with how much you can learn. And it might even take you, it might take you in a direction where you kind of learn bad practices. If you really work for a bad manager in such a company, you need to identify that, and you need to make sure that you have someone else to learn from. And you're very much dependent on other people that you're working in the company. So again, because you have smaller groups and fewer people, each one counts much more. And the specific people that you work with are very important as part of the role. And again, similar that you have a quicker way to move up, you have fewer options to move laterally, right? So if you want to take experience different things that you may not be able to with your role, or if you want to move to different aspects of product management, those types of opportunities may not exist in a small company. And when you're in a corporate, you're kind of on the opposite side of it, both pros and cons. So having a lot of people in the company and a lot of products opens up a lot of opportunities for you to learn, for you to advance. You probably find yourself in a situation where there's already a well-established process, a well-defined roadmap. So as a junior, it might be very easy for you to introduce yourself into the product management world and profession, because everything around you kind of ticks already, and you just have to follow the motions until you're experienced enough and confident enough to start changing those. And having more people gives you more networking opportunities. So more people get exposed to you and the work that you do, and that opens up future opportunities even outside the company. And the cons, again, the flip side, because it's such a well-managed and a large organization, there might not be a lot of flexibility for you to change, for instance, your roles and responsibilities, because they might be very well-defined, kind of in the sense that this is where you need to be and this is what this role needs to be about, and there's not much say about it. And from an execution perspective, there are probably already platforms and frameworks and all kinds of constraints that are existing in the company that you have to deal with, right? They're either very good, which make your life super easy, or they're not that good. And these are things that you have to work around, or things that you have to change. And enacting change in such situations might be hard. So again, really depending on where you want to go, I would say, like, rule of thumb, if you're a starting PM, like super junior, and you want to learn the practice and you want to kind of create a name for yourself and network, going to a corporate would be a good place for you, because there are a lot of people to learn from, a lot of people that will see you and can help you take the next step in your career. Whereas if you find yourself in a later stage in your career that you kind of took a step back from hands-on work and you really, really like that, and you want to be able to experience that while still being more strategic and more involved in company decisions, then a startup would be a good place for you. But again, it's a very personal perspective. It doesn't mean that junior PMs can't do very well in startups as well. I would kind of summarize and say the number one tip if you're going to a startup is making sure that you have a great manager that you can learn from, that can help you build yourself up as a professional. Whereas if you go to a corporate, you have to make sure that the role that you take on is impactful enough so that you don't find yourself in kind of a niche that no one really works with and doesn't have enough exposure in the company. That's my perspective. I don't know if Moria dropped off again.
For now, I guess I can comment. I would agree. I tend to summarize it by, it totally depends on where you want to go. If you see yourself as a startup founder, if you see yourself working in startups, it may make sense to just start and optimize for getting experience at startups and not necessarily corporate. You can find a few opportunities here and in between corporate that would be useful. but oftentimes you are doing a piece of a puzzle. I saw a comment talking about, oftentimes it's true, you're not focusing on product market fit, and you're not really owning the product if it's a large enough organization. On the flip side, if you see yourself at, a big brand name, one of these like unicorn companies, large corporations, then it is a very difficult switch to make from a startup to one of those, unless you are at a startup that has hit it big and you've really made a name for yourself, which is, the exception to the rule and often not the rule. It's similar to how I give people advice about whether they should go to business school or not with corporations and with startups as well. It's worth it if you're going to the top. So if you're going to a top business school, if you're going to, a brand name company, I don't think you can go wrong from there. It'll be easier for you to make a switch to a startup because they'll want someone with that name on your CV, talking about upgrading your CV and that experience. You'll just have more opportunities open up to you. But if it's somewhere in the middle, as if it's a corporation technically, but it's not one that has brand name recognition or a lot of people have heard of, it may still be difficult for you to make that switch. But on the skill side, I actually tend to favor startups, and I would say it's the flip side. I think you can learn so much more from being at a small startup and struggling to find product market fit, even if you fail in a year or two, than what you would learn at a large corporation. So depends on what you want to optimize for.
Very, very good answers, guys. I hope that now you can hear me.
Yes.
Good. Yeah, we made it. Product League 1, technology 0. If you just joined us, so we are on a special Ask Me Anything event with Product League mentors. They are telling you all the little and big answers for your questions as for how to advance your product management career. We are now answering the questions that were already submitted by the attendees of this event previously. And after that, we will go to the questions that you are now asking us in the chat. So I see already interesting, wonderful questions are out there in the chat waiting for these wonderful mentors to answer them. But if you have one of your own, please feel free to jump in, type in, and let us know what is it that you want to have the speaker's opinions about. So with that in mind, we are moving to the next question. And the next question is for you, Terhi. It comes from David. And he's asking, when choosing between job offers, how big should be the advantage of a company or a team where I know the manager is highly skilled or much nurture their team?
Well, I think this question was pretty thoroughly answered in the previous question. So I think in the interest of time, maybe that was enough. I totally agree with everything that was discussed before.
Perfect. If you have nothing to add on Asaf's perspective, that actually, he did mention about some of things.
I would say in the early part of your career, totally optimize for a good lead in corporate or a startup. Like if you can find a good lead who can really support you in learning, go for it. I think that's super important to learn the good habits and to have a manager who makes space for you. Later, you should already have grown your own wings, and then maybe the manager is not so important anymore. You should be able to also manage upwards and kind of bring in your experience, your skills, your view on how to do things. So early stage of your career, definitely optimize for a good lead.
Wonderful. Okay, so we are moving to Asaf again. We have a question from Lauren. Were there are any risk or decisions you took in your product career you now feel they weren't the best choice?
So I love this question because it really made me think in kind of retrospect on my career. I think other than putting aside, choices not made, which is always something we regret, generally speaking, I think the two things that I tend to regret is, one is taking too long to act on something that I felt or even knew to be the right thing to do. That can pertain both to what we do with the product itself, but a lot of how I manage my career. So there were a couple of steps in my career where I knew that what's the right thing for me to do, which wasn't what I was currently doing. And it took me time to kind of accept that or take that step. It could be, so one time it was actually a job opportunity. Other times it were decisions on what to do with the product or my role within that company and how to take the next step. And in some cases, and that ties into the second part, it was mostly because even though I felt it was the right thing to do, I wasn't confident enough. And I kind of waited around for getting that external approval for me to make that move. And then the second point is that it's very important, at least for me, to get enough relevant external perspective before making a decision. So on the one hand, I think we all kind of tend to have a tunnel vision when it comes to us. And getting someone from the outside shine a light on our situation really helps clarify some of these. And sometimes it really helps us make that decision, even though they don't really tell us what to do. And in other cases, getting some perspective from someone on the outside, giving us some feedback on what we're doing and whether it's good for us or not good for us. So making sure to get that external perspective is something I didn't always do. And I always find out that when I do get it, it really helps me either by increasing my confidence that what I was already thinking is really the right thing, or by giving me that extra point of view that helps me, make up a decision eventually.
Okay, so Anya, the next one is for you. But before we're going to do that, to all the viewers that are currently viewing us at home, probably because you're staying safe and well at home, please let us know where are you from, because I see so many wonderful names. Some of them are from our community and some of them are new, which is the best testimony for the wonderful effect that the Anya, Asaf, and Terhi have when they share their knowledge with you guys. So please let us know in the chat, in the comments, where are you from? You already submitted some wonderful questions, and in just one question, we'll go over your questions from the chat, and we'll make sure that at least some of you will get the knowledge that you're looking for. So the next question comes from Skylar. It goes to you, Anya, and he is asking, what advice will you give fresh graduate trying to enter the product management field? Should we start from stakeholder roles like engineers, market, UI, UX, or should we go for entry-level product management roles, possibly in startups?
It's a great question. I'm not sure there's a right answer to that. I'd love to hear everyone else's perspective as well. But I think if you can start from a stakeholder role, that is just fine and super useful for you to transition into a product management career. Similarly, as if you can find an opportunity that is like an entry-level product manager role, there are some organizations that have associate product manager roles or junior product managers. That's great as well. I think either one can be totally conducive to building a great career in product management. And I don't think there's any right or wrong. I think what would be great is for you to leverage your strengths. So rather than even maybe focusing on specifically just only one type of role when you're that early on, is focus on where your passions, your interests are, and where your strengths already are. Do you have a lot of knowledge about a particular field, right? What's your competitive advantage over other people that may be applying, or can that company use that knowledge that you have? Maybe you studied a lot of science, and in a lot of product manager type organizations within the science field, it's much easier to enter as, a marketing person or as a business development person, rather than starting at the product management level. And that's the path that you should follow. Think about the industry you want to end up in, and what industry would be easiest for you to start in, where your strengths lie. But having the perspective of a designer, a marketing person, a business stakeholder, an engineer, and then wanting to switch into product management is just as useful as starting out directly in product management.
I love how, can you hear me?
Mhm.
I'm paranoid again. I love how you ask him to define KPIs for his career. As a true product manager, that you are, think about where is it that you want to be later on, and then define your path according to it. So this is lovely.
I'll be transparent, just to quickly add that I didn't have that kind of plan, or rather I had a plan that I changed 50 times over when I started my career. And I started in intro PM roles, I started in transition roles. And really at that point, it's about you being able to reflect and tell the story. So yes, think about where you want to go and where you're interested and where your strengths are at this moment in time that you're just graduating or you've graduated, and just go with that. It can change. Don't obsess about finding the right path. Just start somewhere. It'll be useful. I promise.
This is great. Yes, I'm sorry.
Maybe I can add to that as a career switcher. So like I worked in a really small company, like small market in a weird language, and spent my time 10 years working there until I decided I really want to work in big tech. And it took me 2 years to find a way to get in. But yeah, it definitely having a clear goal helped me. So I knew what to study. I knew where my gaps were. And I would say it's never too late also. Like I've seen so many great product managers come from like really weird backgrounds that like being obsessed that you make the first move and then like your whole life will be determined by it is also not true.
This is great. And actually, one of the questions we have from the crowd come from Sole. He's from Morocco, but now he's in San Francisco. And he is asking, can we know how they began their career? So I think you already gave him some information about the transitions and the thought that you have at early stages in your career. And this is super interesting. So we have a question from Neria. And he's saying that as a B2B product manager in the majority of my career, I ask myself if I should try to some point to have experience in the B2C business to customers field, or is it better to stick to one? So it's B2B versus B2C, and should we exchange mind within the two?
I think as a product manager, the best thing that you could do is be interested and try a lot of different things. It's not a cemented field. It's not something necessarily that you study in university and get a 4-year degree, a master's in. Maybe eventually it'll get there. But a lot of it is in just being able to pull out your knowledge from all these seemingly disparate fields and experiences and bring it together to your current problem. So I think the more you can see about how other companies, other types of businesses are solving their problems, the more useful it'll be for you to take wherever you go. And there's especially, now a very strong continuing trend of looking at B2B in a different way, more from a consumer perspective, treating your business customers as consumers, making the user experience more seamless. So I think that could be a great skill set, and vice versa, right? There's a lot of these startups and consumer businesses that are trying to figure out how to monetize, how to actually build a profitable business around it. And that's the perspective that B2B can bring to B2C.
This is wonderful. I want to apologize for the times when you see a black brick on your screen. It's because we have a fourth speaker that had to join us, Adva Cohen, and unfortunately, for some reason, she can't log in. So every time I'm retrying to give you the opportunity to hear her experience and to learn from her. So this is why I apologize for that. We have another question from Manuel. And he's asking, really interested in knowing how Anya kicked her career off, mostly how she shifted from Minecraft to Spotify.
Great, because I kicked off my career in a totally different way. There is a talk I have on YouTube where in the first few minutes I talk about all the random things I've done. I mean, I've done everything from like brain cancer research to working at financial banks to working on an independent movie to I had a lot of exploration phases, and tech is the later in life transition. But aside from that, the way that I transitioned from Minecraft or Microsoft to Spotify is really leveraging my strengths. And I saw a lot of questions from you guys in terms of how to make a switch, how to go from, one type of career to another or one type of industry to another. And it's really thinking about how you can reframe and use your strengths for what you already have. So seemingly, there's some similarities, right? Gaming and music are both entertainment. So in that sense, it's a common theme. But what really helped me make the transition in particular, and I'm not an expert in music or gaming, I'll just put that out there. I was honest and transparent with that. But when I was working on Minecraft, one of the things that I ended up focusing on was launching a marketplace that was really focused on allowing creators to make their own creations, to make their own creations and make them available to the larger user base of players out there. And one of the things that I came to Spotify for was to pursue a kind of similar opportunity. They wanted to focus more on creators, particularly in this case, independent artists versus gamers making game creations, and make that more available and have them grow and have a sustainable living that they can make off of their art, which is music. So that is the way that I was able to make the transition, right? Leveraging one experience that maybe you would think is not related or transferable to somewhere, but there may be a new opportunity that a company is pursuing, or perhaps it is even to the core of their mission, but you just need to spin it. It's not that gaming needs to come to music. It was the focus on creators. It could be the focus on payment systems. It could be the focus on a marketing approach. There's lots of different pieces that you can pull out to really leverage your experience and strength on.
Should we answer the question that got presented?
So Dina is asking, could you give tips on how to gain experience with data-driven decisions or data analysis for product managers, maybe hands-on experience?
So this is definitely something that's important for us to pursue as part of our skill set, making sure that we know how to act on data, but also be able to manage data on our own. I think the best advice I could have is to just get your hands dirty with data. Start working with databases, start working with these data collection tools like Mixpanel and Intercom and everything else. Make sure that you don't just get a digestible version of the data, but you actually access the raw data. Because if you're getting a digestible version of the data, you're getting someone's opinion on the meaning of the data, and not necessarily being able to form your own opinion or understanding of what the data means and what's behind the data. So being hands-on as much as possible, and you don't have to take an SQL course or a Python course to be able to access the data. You would probably have someone in the company with those expertise, so you can shadow them, you can sit with them, and you can go through the process together with them. On the way, you would actually learn some of these practices, but at least be involved in the process, even if you're not doing the work yourself. And again, that's opposed to just tasking someone with aggregating the data, summarizing the data in some way, and getting some kind of a digestible version of the data. And then once you have the data and once you have those understandings, it will just immediately feed into whatever decision you have to make. Okay, so you would have one more tool in your arsenal or one more piece of ammo, kind of say, to use when you're actually trying to justify a decision, when you're trying to get to consensus with someone, we're trying to motivate someone to do something that you feel is the right thing to do. You would just have access to that information.
Good. The next question, sorry, comes from David, who's asking any advice on how to advance your career moving from C-League to A-League companies. Sometimes it feels recruiters only care about candidates from brand name companies. Terhi, I guess you'll have an interesting opinion to share about this one.
Yeah, for me, I would actually follow in the footsteps of the previous answer. So for me, my experience was on content and media. So I worked on classifieds, on online news, on TV. And so I had a lot of marketplace and content knowledge and experience. And Zalando was in the process of transforming into a more like engagement platform rather than pure play e-commerce, just focusing on the conversion. So that was my foot into the door into like a bigger company that at least in Europe has a good brand reputation. And so I don't think I would have gotten in unless the company was just doing this kind of transformation in their business model and in how we serve our customers, how we think about what we want to offer, and having that experience from media and content services. So I think that's probably the best way if you have like from a C-League company, if you have some kind of still valuable experience in this like A-League company, then you have a much better chance of getting a foot into the door. And knowing people, like Google, for instance, asks how many people do you know at Google, and yeah, the better connections you have, the better chances you have also to get the interview.
So this is actually a good lead to move us to the next question. This is a question that was submitted earlier. It comes from Camille, and she's asking, do you blog? How vital is showcasing my work on LinkedIn and other places to my career? I feel like I'm so focused on my actual job. I don't have time to do that, and I'm worried I'm losing an advantage I could have got if I would have to present my work on social media.
I don't
What do you
blog.
think?
Does anyone blog? I'd rather the person that blogs answers.
I don't really.
Interesting. Okay. I often wondered this myself as well. Lately, especially since I've had more time since I took the sabbatical, I felt like I would like to, but I have not. So I want to be transparent as that. And I definitely still have opportunities coming my way. And I don't think it hindered me from getting my past roles that I didn't, but it won't hurt for sure.
Yeah. I've written some guest posts in some blogs that have matched what I want to speak about. I've seen some presentations about how to get from senior to the next level and kind of bridge this gap. And one of the things mentioned by those speakers is like build a public profile. Because that's the way, like if people start telling that they are applying to your company because they saw your blog post or your, I don't know, presentation somewhere, then that is going to be a really valuable negotiation point on your promotion. So yeah, do it if you have a point of view and you have a topic you want to talk about. I don't think like randomly writing this or that will help. So it's more like then choose what do you want to speak about, what do you want to change if you're going to start building that kind of long-term profile for yourself.
Good. Thank you very much. Unless one of you have anything to share, we will move. I'm sorry, I heard something or not? Not. Okay. So we'll move to another question. It comes from Sharon. It was also submitted earlier. And this is a question that's close to my heart. She's asking, how important is mentorship to your growth path as a product manager, and why? I'm asking as a mentee to be, what in your opinion are the benefits for me?
I can take this one. I think it directly relates to something I said previously about needing external perspective on what you're doing. I think that a lot of career moves will happen when you transition from company to company. And that's definitely a critical junction point where you have to have someone outside of your current company that you can discuss this with, that will be objective and will have your interest in mind. So that's definitely one place in your career where you need external advice on, and having a mentor to discuss this with that really has your best interest in mind would really help making such decisions. But not only that, I think having someone that you can talk to about your day-to-day, that has experience they can share with you and that can give you perspective on the things that you're doing, that's something really, really important. And not always is your boss the best person to do that. One perspective of this is that your boss has an interest in what happens, and even if they are not, self-promoting, they still have an interest which is greater than your personal success. That's one thing. Secondly, you might, want to dump some emotional baggage on someone, and you don't want that person to be your manager, because for your manager, you want to portray yourself as being in control and being confident and being self-sufficient. And it always helps to have a shoulder to cry on, but not just a spouse or a friend, but someone who really understands the problems that you're dealing with, someone who's been through that before, and someone that can give you actual advice and not only hear your problems and reflect them back to you. So again, I think mentorship is really, really important. I think it's really a key for every person's professional growth. And that actually goes both ways. Getting that external perspective also works as a mentor. When you hear someone's problems, that really helps you reflect on your own problems at that point in your career, but also in your current point in your career. So I think it's really a win-win on both ends.
I agree with you. Anya, Terhi, do you have anything to share? Because you're both you're mentors in heart, right? You two take mentorship and teaching and leading the industry very seriously. So if you have anything else to share.
From a perspective of getting mentorship, I think it's also, to add to everything that was already said, just it's invaluable to have an objective viewpoint, right? So going back to not necessarily someone in your company, not necessarily your manager, just someone doesn't have a stake in what happens, and also just a different perspective, right? Going back to learning as much as you can from different approaches, different industries, that's super valuable. And could also be valuable if you do want to make a transition or you are interested in learning more about a different industry. And from being a mentor, other than the fact that it's probably my life's passion, I feel like I wouldn't be where I am, and I wouldn't have gotten all the opportunities that I've gotten if people didn't mentor me. So it simply comes from the desire to give back and create opportunities for others the way that opportunities were given to me. It's also a way for you to get more leadership experience. It's a way that I got management experience before I became a manager. It's also valuable in terms of career growth, but primarily being a mentor for me, it's just being able to help in personal satisfaction.
I'm loving it. The last question comes from Roy. And actually, I would like each and every one of you to answer it, if that's okay. At what point of your career did you feel that you had transitioned from being a junior product manager to an experienced one? not necessarily talking about a promotion or getting a new title, but more about the mental state of mind and certain actions you started doing that you hadn't done beforehand. And I think that actually it's really interesting to have this question comes after the question about mentorship, because it's about the self-growth within your career and industry. And when do you feel that actually like kind of like you made it, right? All the hard work, all the tears, the sweat, everything comes to life in the shape of you feeling that you are now more in control of your career and you're not a junior product manager anymore. You are a product manager. So Asaf, maybe we'll start with you. When was it that you felt like, kind of like, I did it, I made it?
Yeah. So first of all, I have to share with everyone that I suffer very heavily from imposter syndrome. If you don't know what it means that you downgrade your worth significantly towards relevant to what others sees you. So I really need external feedback to feel like I'm doing something right. That's just my personality. So for me, in line with that was a very specific project that I was put in charge of in eBay that was really, really huge in scope. And there were a lot of people, a lot of teams, a lot of product managers that were involved in this. And that was the first time I actually got a really, really big scope project and product to work on, with responsibilities extending multiple teams, multiple product managers. I didn't manage anyone. It wasn't a title. It wasn't a promotion. It was just an assignment. And that for me was acknowledgement from my peers, from my managers, from the company, saying, we trust you to lead this product, to lead this effort, to lead these additional product managers. Even though you're not their manager, you're not their boss, they're even different departments altogether, but you're in charge of making sure everything works and gets delivered properly at the end. So that was really that critical point in my career where I felt, hey, if I'm getting this kind of trust from the company, it probably means I can do so on my own. And that kind of was the turning point for me.
Thank you very much for sharing this with us, and for being open with us about it. It's not an easy task, right? To find out with yourself when was the time that changed everything. But Terhi, do you have something to share with us about that?
I feel like it probably starts with you noticing that you have something to say. Like if you go to a lunch with another product manager and they are talking about some problems that they have, and you actually have something to say, from experience this situation already, or you have like really good advice and they come back to you later and be like, I tried it, it worked. Like those are the moments like when you start noticing, actually, I know something about this. I have the experience I can pull from that. Those kind of small things starts to build up, and then you start kind of also getting more confidence in the experience you have. And that's why I like going to lunch with people to talk with other product managers a lot in our product community inside the company, etc., to kind of also see and get this kind of also external validation, maybe that I actually have things to contribute and I actually can solve other people's problems as well. And that is kind of the turning point when you're not always asking for advice and always asking for input from others, and actually you can start giving, and you notice that you're right a lot of the times. I think that's like the shift that happens. And
should I answer?
Go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I'll go ahead for now. I totally agree with both of those answers. I use them myself, and I probably also, like many, suffer from imposter syndrome, especially coming into product management, making the switch, not having a technical background, not ever have studied computer science. I often discounted myself a lot, just even as an option for moving closer to product and working with engineers, because I didn't have that background. So it took me some time to really get to a place where I even gave myself the space to entertain that I'm good at this, or I could be. And external validation it helps. It's the easiest answer. So for sure, once recruiters started reaching out to me, or once other people from other teams started reaching out to me, or me wanting to give advice or work on their project, that was certainly external validation that made it obvious for me when I tend to discount myself. But I want to say that it should come internally first and foremost. And I wanted to have a different answer. So I challenged myself to think about it a little more. And I can remember points where I guess it's more internal. At Microsoft, for example, we used to have to do these monster annual reviews. I don't recommend this to anyone as a practice to establish in their company. But they're like huge, long pages of what you would write as your thesis for how you did your performance for the year. What were your accomplishments that you would submit to your manager for in consideration for your like annual review and bonus. But that was a process that made me reflect. I looked back for the year. I looked back at what I was able to accomplish. You know, how much money did my product make? How many new users? How much did engagement increase? Whatever the KPIs, OKRs were. And I do remember sitting down, and when I look back at all the numbers and the impact, the accomplishments that I wrote, I never felt that I did those things. I didn't realize, and I didn't take the time to celebrate the fact that all those things happened, and I drove a lot of them. So it was a more objective way for me to evaluate myself when I look back at what I wrote, and I had to really give myself the freedom to say, I did good. I did these things. I should be proud, and I should advocate for myself and feel more confident. There was specifically another moment also at Microsoft. I think this was when the switch happened for me on the Minecraft team, where there was like a super technical problem. And there are several teams that I worked with, and one of the more technical people that I was working with came to me and they were saying, we can't do this. We have a problem. We're going to be delayed because there's just no way that we can solve this problem. And it's super complicated. And normally I would defer to the technical people. And a lot of times you should value their expertise and defer to them. But I would a lot of times dismiss that problem and just say, okay, and not even ask more questions or try to problem solve with them or help, because I didn't think that I could. How could I? It's a technical problem and I didn't have that expertise. But this was a moment where I decided to ask a little bit more about the problem. And we went to the whiteboard and we tried to like map out what the issues were. I just asked super basic objective questions that I think anyone can ask, just, you know, with some logic and critical thinking, if you really like gave yourself the freedom to explore and believe that maybe you can get to something that just wasn't obvious when you're too deep into the problem. And we actually found a super easy way to solve it from a super basic question that I asked. And that also gave me a lot of confidence and it felt like a switch.
This is good. So our take from that, my take from that is that, Terhi, I'm looking forward to COVID-19 to be over. So we'll have lunch in Germany sometime, hopefully sometime soon, because I am eager to talk product with you. Anya, celebration of success is such a great motive of appreciation to what we do, and you know, something that keeps us going on this not always easy track of being a product manager. And Asaf, everything you just mentioned before, you know, it's challenging, and we need to take some time. The fact that others appreciate us and, you know, promote us and give us the little things in our career that tell us you're doing good. Just taking it out there and give it to ourselves as a self-appreciation and a reminder that we are doing good and we are all creating wonderful product, hopefully valuable product. And even if not, that's okay, because we are on our path to get there. Because if you are on this webinar, this Ask Me Anything event with these wonderful speakers, you are already one step farther, because you are investing in your career. You are doing what you need to do in order to get your mind and heart and work set in the right place. Anya, Asaf, Terhi, it has been a pleasure. I want to thank you all. Anya Ruvinskaya from New York City, product management consultant. Terhi Hänninen from Berlin, senior product manager at Lingo. And Asaf Bord from New York City as well, senior product manager at WeWork. We've grown with you during this session. We've learned so much from you. Thank you. I can't say it in any other way than just big thank you. I see that you got the audience so inspired because the questions are just spot on and so interesting. Unfortunately, we didn't have the time to dive in all of them, but we did have the time to dive into a few. And that's it. This is Product League. This is the new series of Ask Me Anything event that we're going to have every Tuesday. This is the first one. So next week and the week after and the week after, we are waiting for you. And that's it. Anya, Asaf, Terhi, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Thanks for planning this.
I couldn't have done this without you, like literally. So, so the stage is yours. The person to thank to is you guys. And I know your work because obviously you're mentors on Product League, so I know you, right? But it's always so personal to get these questions and hear you. Talking from the bottom of your heart and from your experience, right? Sharing your thoughts about one of the most challenging topics out there, like how to advance your career and how to advance your product career, which is even more challenging. So thank you very much. You're awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.